Hello and welcome to the Remotely Review. I'm your host, Remotely. Thank you guys for tuning in. I'm going to be giving you guys a review on a TV show over on Netflix. It's called Trial by Media. I'm not sure if you've seen it yet, but I highly recommend it. This show chronicles the lawsuit filed against Jenny Jones. You guys can recall the TV show Jenny Jones, right? It was a talk show. Back in the early 90s, it ended in 2003, I believe. But Jenny Jones, she was like a firecracker. When Jenny Jones popped in the scene, I mean, the show just took off. You know what I mean? There were talks about Jenny Jones wanting to either be or replace an Oprah Winfrey. Now, she failed on that one, okay? There's only one big O, right? But Jenny Jones, for what it's worth, was a great show. I mean, I caught it late in its life. You know, I caught Jenny Jones, I think, when it was actually fizzling out. But prior to Jenny Jones fizzling out, they actually encountered a major lawsuit, and this was all due to a murder that took place in the result of one of her shows. Yep. Look, I'm going to just give you guys the rundown on what took place with that particular show, and then I'll let you have at it, make of it what you will. But on a particular episode of Jenny Jones, she had requested for guests to either come on the show or recommend somebody to come on the show who was willing to come out or admit to a same-sex crush. Okay? This is what Jenny Jones and her producers had come up with. And this is the 90s we're talking about, okay? So homophobia is still running rampant. You know, it's out of control. You know, people are still being slain and murdered for their sexuality. They're still being arrested and stuff like that. You know what I mean? And so, you know, these are sensitive times right now. So lo and behold, somebody actually responded to Jenny Jones's request. And they decided to go on the show and reveal their crush. Now, there are certain rules and regulations that are put in place prior to a guest actually accepting the offer and agreeing to come on the show. Okay, the producers do make the guest aware that, hey, somebody has called in, they have a crush on you. We can't reveal whether or not it's a man or a woman, but there's somebody who has a crush on you and they want to reveal it on the show. Okay, and so it's clear from day one that there's a possibility that this could be a man or a woman. You know, it could go either way. Okay, so Jenny Jones and her producers made that clear from the start. All right, and so the guy accepted. He accepted that request, and he agreed to come on the show. They flew him out, and upon arrival, this guy was introduced to his crush, and his crush happened to be a next door neighbor of a friend of his, if that makes any sense. Yeah, so this guy, his name was Scott Amador, and he lived next door to a young lady who was friends with another gentleman, okay? Now, this other gentleman happened to be Jonathan Schmidt, all right? Now, Jonathan Schmidt was a strapping young lad, you know, handsome, you know, nice physique, you know, strong facial features, a full head of hair, you know, the quintessential jock type, okay? And this is in comparison to a Scott Amador who, I mean, look, not for nothing, and I don't mean to be offensive, but he looked like your common late 1980s, early 1990s closeted gay man who just was not the most attractive. Somebody who looked like they were struggling with not only their sexual identity, but just how they look, you know, their physical appearance. You know, you could kind of see those things in this person. I did. This is what I read from this guy, okay? This is what I read from Scott Amador, okay? But anyway, to move along with the proceedings of this show and how everything turned out, Scott is actually sitting there next to the friend, the mutual friend, right? And Jonathan walks out onto the set. He sees both of them. Does he look surprised? I mean, somewhat. I've had my fair share of dealings with people. You know, people express themselves in different ways. I don't care what you think the commonalities are. To me, he appeared to be okay with what he saw on the set until he got that embrace from Scott. When Jonathan walked over to actually greet the mutual friend and Scott, Scott attempted to hug Jonathan, and immediately you could tell that Jonathan just was not there for it. Like, he didn't like it. He resisted it, like, to the highest level, I think. I mean, there was no reciprocation of the hug, of the embrace. He didn't push him away. He didn't push him away, but you could tell that he was uncomfortable. I think in that moment, I think it's safe to say that Jonathan knew what was up. I think he knew that they were there to reveal a crush from Scott. I think he knew. And so, as the show progresses, Jenny Jones, she actually poses the question, well, do you know who you're here for? Do you know who has the crush on you? And of course he says no. But Jenny Jones goes on to reveal who actually has the crush. And immediately Jonathan says, you lied. And so to me that implies, well, hey, I got a call from Jenny Jones. I'm going to go ask Scott. I'm going to go ask our friend. I'm going to go ask everybody. Did you call Jenny Jones and tell them that you have a crush on me? And apparently Scott told him no, and the other girl told him no as well. Like, the mutual friend told him no as well. And so this guy was, I mean, it just seems like he was already prepared for what was to come the moment he stepped out there on that stage. You know what I mean? Because I think he had already asked everybody. And so when Jenny Jones revealed that, and for him to look over and say, you lied to me, like, and he said it so rapidly, like, it was so promptly, so quick. It just seems like he already kind of had an idea of what was about to happen, okay? Now, if Jonathan was acting throughout this entire process, I think he needs the Oscar. I think he needs the Emmy. I think he needs all of the awards. You know what I mean? Because to me, he handled it quite well. I mean, listen, to be somebody who is proclaiming to be heterosexual, and which is, he actually did that during the show. I mean, he made it clear. He wanted the audience to know that he is heterosexual, okay? And the moment he proclaimed to be heterosexual, the crowd went wild. I mean, they went crazy. Like, they stood up, they like jumped up and down, you know, because this is during a time where, like I said, homosexuality is still shunned upon. I mean, it's still shunned upon today. Like, it's still like a big deal, and we still have a long way to go to be accepted. It's just like, you know, the racism with black people. I'm not comparing the two, because homosexuality is nothing like what the racism is towards black people or just minorities in general. It's just not the same thing. But the point I'm trying to make is that it's a struggle. It's a social issue that must be addressed, is what I'm saying, okay? And so, you know, you got to think about back in like 1995, 1996 and stuff like that. Like, it's still an issue that could get you killed. You know what I mean? Like, an issue, like, you can die from this, you know, if somebody finds out that you're gay, you know? And so for Jonathan to sit there and proceed through the rest of that show with the most confidence, I think he maintained himself and held his composure in the most proper form. I think, considering what he was up against, considering how he was just kind of bombarded by all of this information, you know, I give him props for sitting through it. You know, he did not go off, or, you know, he did not, you know, become angry or boisterous or loud or out of control and disorderly. Like, he maintained himself. Now, they even said that after leaving the show, the three of them, the mutual friend, Jonathan, and Scott, all agreed they wanted to fly home together. They flew back home together. And one of the producers of the Jenny Jones show says that when the show ended, after the taping was cut and it was clear for everybody to go home, you know, the gates were closed, they had their martini shot, all of that stuff, Jonathan actually stated that he had a good time on the show. When you're getting that kind of feedback from an individual who has just been bombarded with some information that, I mean, to a lot of people will take you off guard, it might make you angry, you know, depending on who you are, where you're from, and what you know and what you don't know, okay? It might make you angry. But it seems like Scott dealt with that quite well. They flew home. They continued to actually hang out, from what the story says. This is what, all of this stuff was revealed in court, okay? They had gone to a bar, had some beer, stuff like that. At that bar, Jonathan had actually called his father and said, hey, listen, what happened in Chicago did not actually go well. It was actually a guy who had the crush on me. And of course, Jonathan's father was upset, and, you know, he said the F word and all of that different stuff, you know. And are you surprised, though? I mean, I'm not saying it's okay. I'm not condoning it. I'm just saying, like, are we surprised that his father flew off the handle and started, you know, dropping the F-bomb everywhere? You know, I mean, at this point, for me, I don't know if it's safe to say that Jonathan was uncomfortable or upset, mad, or angry. I'm sure he was embarrassed, okay? I don't care how well he dealt with it on the show. I know he was embarrassed, okay? This is national television. And, you know, you're talking about a topic right now that the world is just not ready for, okay? And you're associating me with it. This is how Jonathan may have felt, okay? And, but to go back and have beers and drinks and stuff like that, like, what's going on? What's really going on? And after they have these beers at that bar, I guess they end up at somebody's house, somebody's apartment, Scott's house, I believe. And one thing led to another. Scott and Jonathan ended up slow dancing. And as the night progressed, they ended up undressing and having sex. This is all according to Scott, okay? And I say that because they had one of Scott's friend on the show, and one of Scott's friends had actually said that Scott called him up and told him that they had had sex. And so you're talking about a man who has just sat on the Jenny Jones show and proclaimed his heterosexuality, okay? But is now being accused of having full-blown sex with a homosexual man. I don't know. I'll remind you guys that initially the mutual friend had stated that Jonathan's family at one point in time questioned his sexuality, okay? I don't know why, because the father actually went on trial for this too. The father says that Jonathan always had, you know, just quarrels and stuff with females, with women, whatever that means. And so to say that the family had questioned his sexuality, like, I don't know what that's about. Like, but this is what the mutual friend sat on the witness stand and said. Like, she sat before a jury and stated that, you know. And so anyway, moving along, they end up at the house, they have the sex. Following that, a light comes up. Like, somebody found a light in a parking lot, and it was like this ongoing joke between the two. Something about that light. Because somebody, I think Jonathan had a missing tail light or something in his car and he needed it fixed. And so after Scott found that tail light, he placed it in front of Jonathan's door. But along with that light, he left a note. And this note was very salacious. It was very provocative, just very, you know, like steamy. You know what I mean? Very suggestive, you know, in a sexual nature, I should say. And according to the TV show, or from what it looks like that was the nail in the coffin for Jonathan. He couldn't take it anymore. He blew a gasket, drove to the bank, withdrew some money, drove to a store, purchased a shotgun, loaded that shotgun, and then proceeded to Scott's mobile home, okay? Knocked on the door, was greeted by Scott, an angry Scott, who at one point lifted a chair to either defend himself or just to taunt Jonathan. But after doing that, Jonathan raised his shotgun, pulled the trigger, and actually shot Scott, okay? And at the hospital, Scott was reported and announced dead. And so, of course, Jenny Jones and the TV show caught the brunt end of this. People wanted to blame the Jenny Jones show, all of that stuff. I think there's responsibility to be taken on both sides, okay? Because, well, there's so many different layers to this story, okay? Because, for one, I see where somebody will be mad at Jenny Jones and say, how dare you invite these people on the show and exploit them like that? I get that. I see that argument. I don't think it's valid before a court and a jury, though, because, well, Jenny Jones already made you aware that this could be a man or a woman. So if you have any issues with being associated with a gay man, you need to stay home, because that is a possibility. You know what I mean? So you're taking responsibility for whatever the outcome of this show might be. You really are. You know, I mean, within limits, you know, within limitations. When and this crush and any other individuals that you might be involved with in your personal life, like, you're responsible for that on your own. You know, I can't be held liable for that. But anyway, and so after shooting Scott dead, Jonathan actually had driven to a payphone. He called the cops. He dialed 911, and he told them that he wanted to turn himself in for shooting a guy. And over that phone call, he actually revealed the reason why he shot him. He says that he shot him because he played a dirty game on him. He had taken him on the Jenny Jones show. This is what Jonathan had actually revealed to 911, the 911 dispatcher. Yeah. And so he was honest about it. He knew he had done a bad thing. He knew that he was up against a monster now because of what he had done. I'm going to tell you what it sounds like to me. What it sounds like to me is that Scott and Jonathan did indeed have some sort of sexual encounter. Okay. I think Jonathan was okay with that until he actually was able to read that or see that in writing. So when he received that note along with that light on his front door, that note said much more than what can be seen with the eyes. To Jonathan, it said much more. To Jonathan, it says, you know what we did the other night? It was great. I liked it. Here's what we can do to make it happen again. Okay? This is what it said to Jonathan. And I think, you know, Jonathan was probably thinking, well, you left this in front of my door. How dare you? My neighbors could see this. Anybody could have read this. Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. He's going to tell everybody now. Everybody's going to know that I've had sex with a man. Blah, 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 blah. I got to kill him. I got to kill him. I got to kill him. That's what Jonathan was thinking, okay? This is what drove this man to the point where he needed to go to the bank, withdraw a large sum of money, instantly make a purchase, okay? A shotgun, drive to this man's house and shoot him dead. He drove there with the intent to kill him. I think he did. You just don't do stuff like that. You know what I mean? Like, you don't do stuff like that. I mean, a rumor is a rumor. Like, we know this, right? Like, a rumor is a rumor, and rumors do spread. They go viral, whatever, right? But to require a gun to make your peace with somebody, it's not that deep. You know what I mean? Like, that's unnecessary. That's unnecessary. There's got to be some sort of anger and hostility in you to the point where you are driven to want this person to die. Because we know that, you know, I'm just saying, like, I'm trying to put myself in both people's shoes. And like I said, off bat, immediately, when Jonathan was introduced to the audience on the Jenny Jones show, you could tell that this man wanted to maintain his heterosexuality. He did not want that to be faltered or disrespected, anything of that nature. Like, he wanted to maintain that at all costs. All right. And you guys know how these guys do out here. Like, they're the most straight, macho looking people that you could ever meet in your life, looking and acting. Okay, physically, emotionally, mentally, they express themselves as a cisgender man, but they're actually gay, like homo gay. They don't really like girls. Like, they put up a front like they like girls, but they really don't like girls. But because of what society says about homosexuality, then they've got to put on this front and suppress their feelings all day and all night for the rest of their lives, right? And so when you're dealing with somebody like that, those people are driven to the point of killing you if you reveal their secrets. They will kill you. Okay, because that's how much they feel responsible to society. You understand what I'm saying? Like, and I don't get it. I never will get it. I'll never understand it. But I do think that Jonathan did indeed drive to Scott's house to kill him. He drove there to murder him. Okay. Now, they tried Scott for a first-degree murder in court. They were unsuccessful in that. However, they did get him on second-degree murder. They got him on second-degree murder, and that charge carried, I think, 25 to 50 years or something like that in that state. All right, 25 to 50 years. And after serving 22 years, Scott was actually released. Okay, but during this time while he was in jail, put away, the families had actually sued the Jenny Jones show in a civil suit. They sued Jenny Jones in a civil suit, and they sued her for $25 million. They wanted Jenny Jones and her production team to be held accountable for what Jonathan had actually did after that show. Okay, now I'll tell you guys that this all happened within 4 days after the taping of that Jenny Jones episode. All right, so this show hasn't even aired yet. The people of the community haven't even seen it yet. Okay, And Jonathan, for some reason, I don't know if he had bottled all of this stuff up, or like I said, like the sexual encounter between him and Scott got the best of him and he just couldn't deal with it anymore. But within 4 days, he went out and committed this heinous crime. Okay, I'm not taking sides. I'm not on anybody's side, because I do feel as though, well, they were both victims. Jonathan and Scott were both victims, because how dare you bring me onto a talk show to reveal something like this to me? Crush from a guy or a girl, I do not care. Like, don't bring me here to talk to me about this. You know me, you know where I live, you see me, maybe not often, but frequently. You know what I mean? Tell me this in person. How dare you? I'm embarrassed. I probably spent some money to get here. I had to buy some clothes, whatever. I took time off of work. I thought this was going to be a great experience. You just ruined it. Like, you ruined it with this news, okay? And the mutual friend, she's there. You could tell that she's there really more in support of Scott. She was there more in support of Scott, and you could tell. Like, she was on Scott's side from the jump. Even in the court case, the court proceedings, like, she was on Scott's side. Okay. Now, I don't want to take away from the loss of Scott either. We did lose a life in this situation. Scott's life was lost, okay? We can't get that back. So Scott is indeed a victim. He's a victim. I think he's a victim to his own stuff, though. Scott is a victim to his own stuff. Like, Scott decided to do that. Scott decided to bring a man who identifies as a heterosexual onto a national talk show and reveal that he has a crush on him. Like, you know what kind of jeopardy you could be putting this man in socially. You know what I mean? This man has to return home to his friends and family, his co-workers and stuff like that. And now all of a sudden they're going to be talking about him being associated with some gay man on a national talk show. I'm not trying to be disrespectful to the LGBTQ community. I'm a part of it. I am a member. I'm just telling you guys, I'm trying to remain neutral in this situation and give it to you the way the other side would see it. Some people will look at this situation and say, oh, there goes another homophobe killing one of ours. That's not what happened. I mean, was he possibly homophobic? Yeah. But homophobia starts at an early age. Like, homophobia is taught. They teach children to be homophobic. All right? Because, I mean, as much as we fight for our rights and stuff like that, even that has an adverse effect. Because if you're teaching and constantly telling people that, well, this is what's right and don't let anybody tell you that it's wrong, well, you're actually revealing the fact that, well, at some point in time, it was considered to be wrong, you know? And so you're constantly baking in the negativity around it instead of just being. And so anyway, that's not the case here with Jonathan Schmidt. Jonathan Schmidt was indeed somebody who probably struggled with who he is or who he was as an individual, and you saw that reflected in his actions, the actions that he took against Scott. Now, like I said before, Scott was a victim of his own mess. He should have been a little bit more respectful, okay? He should have respected Jonathan. You don't bring somebody on a national talk show and discuss such personal matters like that unless you know for a fact they're going to be okay with it, you know? And so anyway, I just want to be clear that both parties were victims here. One of them lost their life. One of them lost 22 years of their life sitting behind bars. To me, and from what I saw, from what I could see, they should have convicted Jonathan of first-degree murder. It was premeditated. It was premeditated. Maybe he didn't go over there saying, I'm gonna kill him, but I think he went over there with the intent of that man dying. I think he wanted Scott removed from his entire existence. You could see that, you know, he kept such a poker face throughout the entire court proceeding, throughout that entire trial. He kept a poker face, and I mean, it's evident that the guy knew what he had done. Like, he knew what he was going to do. He knew what he had done, because he dialed 911 and confessed it. He confessed at what he had done. I just shot a guy. He knew what he had done. He knew what he had intended to do. It was too much for him. It was overwhelming. And so anyway, Jonathan is locked up. He's put behind bars. The family, the Amador family, Scott Amador's family, they proceed with a civil suit against Jenny Jones and her production team. They were saying that Jenny Jones and her production team had subjected Jonathan and Scott to that situation, and therefore should be held accountable, at least financially, for what the family had endured. Okay? Now, they had hired a guy. His name is Jeffrey Feigl. Jeffrey Feigl was known for his, just kind of boastful, over the top, flamboyant, show pony like personality. Like, this was a guy who loved the spotlight. He was a drama major in college, and he's somebody who could get up in front of a jury and tell a story. So Jeffrey Feigl prided himself on being that guy who was, you know, a master storyteller. Okay, he was in the art of telling a story. Okay, so he decides to take on the case and kind of fight for the money for that family, right? As the first case proceeds, he goes in there and he gives a 2-hour opening statement. They said that this was unprecedented. They had never seen a 2-hour opening statement from anybody. They had never seen it before. But this is the art of telling a story, according to Jeffrey Feigl. The moment, I think, the star of the show, who everybody was waiting for, was Jenny Jones. They actually got Jenny Jones to testify in this trial. That's crazy, right? Look, one day you're hosting one of the biggest talk shows in the nation, and then the next day you are standing trial for one of your segments? This is what happened with Jenny Jones. And so, you know, initially the jury and everybody, the critics, were kind of impressed by Jenny Jones and her performance, but it wasn't until Jeffrey Feigl got up there and broke her down and, for lack of a better word, broke her smile. He broke her smile, and after he broke her smile, there was no turning back. Okay, Jenny Jones had actually been revealed as somewhat of a manipulator, somebody who very much indeed knew the risks and the you know, the damage that she was causing to these people. And Jeffrey Feigl nailed her on every point. Okay, and so to make a long story short, the family actually was awarded $25 million. Okay, now they were not able to see a dime of that $25 million because right after Jenny Jones and her team lost the case, they filed an appeal, and on that appeal they actually won. It was a 2-1 victory in favor of the Jenny Jones show. Okay, so the family, Scott's family, like they never saw any of the money. Okay, it's very unfortunate, but the courts did not see where Jenny Jones and her production team was liable for what took place after the show. You know what I mean? Ethically and morally, I think it's safe to say that they were wrong, but legally, from a legal standpoint, you can't get that on Jenny Jones. You can't get it. And I knew that from the jump. Like, you can't, you know. I think at the end of the day, though, Jenny Jones still lost. I think she still lost in that because, well, your show is forever stained now. Like, somebody was murdered due to a segment that you produced. You know, like, due to some of your messiness, somebody had to die. And so I think that probably left a stain on the show. Jenny Jones has stated that she wanted to be as big as Oprah, and that's probably one of the reasons why that never happened for Jenny Jones. You know, it's unfortunate. Jenny Jones, like I said, I caught it late. I was never like the biggest fan of Jenny Jones. I wasn't old enough to really be into Jenny Jones like that, but I'm well aware of the show. Okay, and so if you guys are looking for something salacious, entertaining, sensational, nail-biting, on the edge of your seat type of stuff, head on over to Netflix. Check out Trial by Media. There's a few different installments. Next on my list is the one with Blagojevich. He was one of those politicians and just came under a lot of scandal. Okay, and I actually had to go to jail for it. I'm going to be watching that one. I'll be sure to bring you guys a review. Okay, this is all on Netflix. If you don't have a Netflix account, borrow your friend's Netflix account or something, okay? Because this stuff is must-see TV, all right? This has been the Remotely Review. I'm your host, Remotely. Until next time, have a good one.